Hello, and welcome to today's Fleet Owner webcast. Our topic is how to turn maintenance into profit, master TCO for your fleet, sponsored by AMCS. I'm Josh Fisher, editor-in-chief of fleetowner.com, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we dive into today's presentation, let me just take some time to explain to you how you can engage with us during the webinar. And if you encounter any technical issues, please type your concerns into the Ask a Question box, and a member of our team is standing by to assist you. We also encourage you to submit your questions throughout the event. We will address as many as possible during the Q&A session after the main presentation, but feel free to send your questions in at any time. And to refer a colleague to today's webcast, share it on social media, or access event resources, click the icons on the left side rail of your screen. Lastly, please note that today's session is being recorded and will be available on fleetowner.com within the next week. You will receive an email notification once the recording is live. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. John Davis is head of delivery for fleet maintenance at AMCS Group. John has worked in the fleet maintenance industry since 1983. He joined Dossier Systems, which was later acquired by AMCS in 2005. John is responsible for the Fleet Management Consulting Group, an in-house team of former fleet managers who help AMCS fleet maintenance customers implement best practices and fleet management software. John's team also helps users who want to improve their use of the software or get their operations to the next level. While most of his time is spent in the field work with customers, John also works closely with the AMCS transport product and development teams to bring the daily real-world user perspective to the product. Also joining us today is Maggie Laird, fleet management consultant for AMCS Group. Maggie is an award-winning fleet management expert and author of many industry articles and blogs. She has impacted more than 500 transportation companies across North America. She currently shares her knowledge with the customers at AMCS Dossier Systems. A dynamic speaker, implementation specialist, and consultant with more than 49 years of experience, Laird helps fleet organizations streamline maintenance operations and prioritize and sustain strategic goals while utilizing the latest technology. Maggie's work has been recognized throughout the industry as she has presented at industry-leading events such as Women in Trucking and other fleet and system conferences. Maggie's insights help teams transform their culture from merely surviving change to thriving through it. So before I turn this over to Maggie, I want to go over today's agenda. We're going to start off by looking at today's realities, and then we're going to take a look at neglected costs, how neglect costs more, why TCO is your best metric, how to calculate TCO, and how to reduce TCO. And then we'll get to all of your questions and answers as time allows. With that, I'd like to turn this meeting over to Maggie. Maggie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here and tell you good afternoon. It's a pleasure to always talk about fleet. Those that know me, and some of you on here do, will recognize that that is a big thing that I like to talk about. I did want to say one thing when you introduced John. I've worked for John for 14 years, and so we have a pretty good working relationship between the two of us. So we will give you the best of the best today and see where we go from there. I did want to talk to you a little bit about the TCO, or total cost of ownership, and some of the key factors that bring us to such a what's a good word that I want to use here? I guess I would say we want to bring you the factors that are going to be hurdles and challenges and great successes. So the first one I want to talk about is maintenance. It's one that everybody on the shop floor, from the mechanic all the way up to the CEOs, knows about the cost of maintenance. We don't recognize all the time how we need to track that or why. And so one of the largest increases that we have to deal with is the cost of maintenance, and there's lots of pieces to that. So we're just going to focus on that a little bit and understand that the biggest drivers of your cost of ownership maintenance if it's not managed strategically, will erode profitability. And so we want to help you be as profitable as we can. So with that, John, from your perspective, what are some specific strategies or tools you found effective for managing rising maintenance costs?
Right. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks everybody for joining us as well. Well, the slide we've got up on the screen is interesting. It kind of woke me up as to realizing, my goodness, maintenance costs went up 40%. Now that's according to a report from American Trucking Association. It does focus on that industry. Some other industries might be more or less, but it's a good benchmark for us. The good news is, as of the end of 2024, it had started leveling off and more or less following the regular CPI. So we're trending in the right direction, but that is such a jolt. I mean, I've been, as you heard from the intro, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never seen an increase so dramatic in such a short time. Well, we all know what caused that, right? We know the events of 2020 caused that, but the reality is those costs aren't going to go back down. So what can we do to deal with this massive increase that we've had, right? It's affecting every organization, whether you're for profit or government, and you have to be accountable to taxpayers, what can we do, right? So one of the best things, we're going to talk about it more at length as today goes on, but it's having a rock solid preventive maintenance plan, and then working that plan and complying with that plan. And you will definitely see, while it might not initially reduce, it might take a couple of years to get there, it will at least stabilize and avoid unexpected costs to a great extent. I mean, you're never going to be perfect, but we can work towards that. And you really need a good tool. Any of the great fleet management systems out there, ours included, will give you good metrics on how you're complying with your own plan, and that takes effort, because even though you may run the same piece of equipment in two different cities that you operate, it may have different maintenance requirements or preventive maintenance cycles that it needs based on the environment that it's operating in. So we'll get through that a little bit as the presentation goes on today in our discussion. So right now we have a poll for you, and what we'd like to know is, do you think you have good oversight on your total cost of ownership? So if you would take a couple minutes and answer that, and then we'll look at the results here in a moment. Once again, it's just asking to yes or no. Do you have good oversight? You may not like where it is, but do you have visibility into it? I guess that's the whole piece here. Right. Well, it looks like we're still getting more answers coming in. It's following pretty traditional metrics on this, and we'll publish that here in just a moment so you can see what we got back from everybody. Thank you for taking the time to we only have a couple other poll questions, so we won't kill you with that today. All right, I think we could publish that now, right? And they've been published. So you're seeing, look at that, 77% is no. That's normal. When Maggie and I've done many of these conferences over the years, and that's what we get, right? So you're in good company, even though you had to say no. That's not unusual. So, okay, Maggie, I think talk about some of the key factors here.
All right, so some of the key factors, as you can see on the screen, talk about aging vehicles, soaring repair bills, and parts inflation. I'd like to talk a little bit more on each of those. And when I think about aging fleet, the problem we have is the cost of the fleet initially. We're going to try and keep it a little longer. We're going to see what happens with that. The older the fleet is, the more expensive it is to repair. With parts, the problem that we have is getting the supply for the older equipment. Some of those pieces of equipment you can't find anymore. So yeah, you might go out to the junkyard and see if you can't pick it up, but then the quality of the repair isn't going to be there. And so then we have this soaring repair bill. Labor rates are high. You have the cost of just having the maintenance facilities. Do I do it internally or do I do it externally? Where am I? Am I in a location and my fleet is very centralized? Then it makes sense perhaps to have your own maintenance facility. If not, you're relying on all of the external trucking, like TA or like Lowe's. You got Love's out there, you got Pilot, you have Flying J, you have a lot of them that a trucking company will go out and have to do with external maintenance. And then you have to manage that external maintenance to see if you're getting quality repairs. So aging vehicles also affects your replacement and life cycle that is part of TSO. So those are just some things to think about when you're looking at this. And of course, with all the changes, as John alluded to with COVID, we now have our own set of let's getting our parts, where are they coming from? And how is that supply going to be continue to be disrupted? So one thing to think about is you might want to have a secondary supply source that your fleet personnel down in maintenance know that if they can't get it from your primary, where's the secondary they can get? You can track that in your fleet system. John, would you like to talk about rising labor costs? As rates rise, so do the repair bills. So what have you been seeing throughout the industry?
Yeah, so with it, not only are the parts going up, right? And we saw that hit us really, really fast, but the labor, I've been hearing my entire career that we have a shortage of people, right? Well, there is a shortage of great people out there that do a good job for you. And I don't think doesn't seem like that's ever going to change. So you're trying to attract the best talent. And it is commanding because we have less people going into the field. There's no doubt about it. I just came back from, we have the honor of being a judge at the Technology and Maintenance Council for the ATA. And we've been doing that since the 19 of the 20 years that program has been going on. And I get to see firsthand, what are the technicians coming through? They're a great bunch. They're far more educated and knowledgeable going in, but there's less of them. Right, we have less people that were participating in that than years ago. So the best of the best I got to see, and I got to see how they were doing, and it was very impressive in the station I had. But let's face it, Maggie and my group, and I mean some of you others are on the same age group as we are. We're retiring in record numbers right now, right? So you've got your most senior management, your supervisors, they're leaving fast. That knowledge is walking out the door. And so you need to give the mechanics and technicians that are coming in, they expect good tools. You figure, I was working with a fleet not long ago, and they had just shy of 2,300 mechanics across the country. And it was a staggering number. I didn't even write it down. I wish I could remember the exact number, but I do remember this. 49%. And it was some other little number behind that. Their mechanics are 19 to 29 years old. So you think about that. Those folks have always had a phone in their hand, right? You go to them and you tell them you've got to take a work order and you've got to write that thing on a piece of paper. They're going to look at you like you're green, right? There's something wrong with that. So we've got to digitize and transform the world because that's what they expect. They want good tools, and not just good tools for fleet software. They want good diagnostic tools, right? And they want good working conditions. And then of course there's work-life balance and all the other things that come up today that we face, but that is where we are, right? And so having good technologies is good because let's face it, the equipment doesn't get any easier to work on. They're just packing more and more and more things. I was working with one of our customers not too many years ago, and he said, I don't know if you realize this, John, it was one of the big waste and recycling fleets. He said that same truck has 700 more components on it than it did just 5 years ago. This is a few years ago. He's talking about when all the new emissions and things. You think about that, 700 new components. That's incredible. on just one thing. And my old career was mass transit, same thing, right? You got so many systems on these pieces of equipment that it just goes. So what do we do, right? And we'll have a little more conversation about it, but the best way that we can keep these things from breaking down and really changing things for us is to do proper preventive maintenance and try to stop it at the beginning and give you the tools to be able to know that you are doing your maintenance plan that you want. Okay. Then Maggie, I think you might have a few words to add on that. As far as parts, that was your expertise.
Thank you. So from the parts side, we have a lot of different part models for whether it's just in time, which just means that you're holding the cost is being held at the vendor until you buy it. It leaves you extra real estate if in your own environment so that you can track and only keep the things that you need right away. But one of the things with the parts is that we don't look at true equivalence. We don't see what we have. And I think I alluded to it a little earlier. You really do need to have more than one resource that you can buy these parts from when you need them. And so when we take a look at this, the supply chain disruption that we've had across the globe is unbelievable. And it's soaring demand because we're keeping the equipment longer. We have new equipment that we buy. And do we stock all that for parts? Do we really take it back to the vendor for warranty? What are the parts warranties? What are we tracking on that? One of the things that I learned a long time ago, and most people are not aware, that if a part is manufactured in the United States of America, it is required to have a 90-day warranty by the manufacturer, not necessarily the vendor. And instead, we're like, oh, it'll take too long to take this truck and take it out of service to go get warranty. You need to recoup those costs as part of your total cost of ownership. It'll help reduce that if you track your warranty. So prices for replacement parts and consumables are just out of control. But the problem doesn't end there, because if you have a part shortage, it keeps your vehicle down. And then you have other costs associated with that. Extended downtime. Now you have a driver that can't go out. Now you have a truck that's down. Or you decide you have to have more vehicles in your fleet because you have so many down. All of that circles right back to proper maintenance and keeping the parts that you need on hand when you need them. So productivity compounded because maintenance costs are related, and you can see all of that. So next, John, I think, do you have any thoughts on any of those two factors?
I do. And the one thing that I want to discuss really is preventive maintenance. I don't know if you have any words on that. And then I'd like to talk about the negative side. What happens what's the cost of skipping PMs? But I think maybe you have some thoughts on that.
I do have some thoughts on that. If we skip PMs, the problem that we're going to run into is it's going to cost more for the other repairs. So if I find a problem early on, I can easily take care of that problem at the time that it's there. If I've got a nice checklist that tells me everything I should check, so my PM is definitely more than just a lube oil filter in today's world, and you have different levels of your PMs as well. So preventive maintenance isn't just turning the wrench. It's one of the most powerful levels that you have, and you need to look at that. And PMs reduce two big costs: downtime and unpredictable repairs. The last thing you want to do is be out picking up garbage if you're a garbage fleet and have that go down and you can't pick up all the rest of the garbage on the road. Well, that would be bad. If I'm an over-the-road trucker, the problem is now I have a load that I can't deliver. So preventive maintenance is a big way to maintain safety for your drivers, but it also lets you go in and say, How can I minimize the downtime? How can I be more efficient? And how can we make sure that we are checking all of these issues every time that we're there? It's not just on the fleet side. It keeps the drivers of your users safe. A lot of times we think preventive maintenance is just that oil change. Instead, it should be a safety inspection with the necessary repairs done before it goes out on the road, breaks down, costs you more, etc. When the costs rise and budgets get tight, it's tempting to defer or skip preventive maintenance. Are you doing them too soon? Are you doing them on time? Are you having to skip them? But it's short-term thinking. Do I want to spend more than I should at the front end? Do I want to wait and spend it when I can get on time? Or if I skip it, what's the downside and what's the upside? Skipping it, there will be a time that is the correct thing, and John's going to talk more about that. But it's not just keeping the vehicles running for preventive maintenance. It's a chain reaction when you do and when you don't use them. John, what do you think drives the decision to skip or delay a PM?
Well, you're right. There are reasons. Sometimes they're valid and you got to do it. But it should be the exception, right? And I want to remind everybody, please put in whatever questions you have. We'll have time at the end for any questions. Please just put them there and we'll get them moderated and get through just as many as we can. We've got quite a few already. Thank you very much for your input. So I always think of it as the big seven, right? Like, what is the cost? And it's not a lucky seven. It's like, this is the seven things, right? And it's easy for me to kind of remember those, right? So think about an organization where I'm the maintenance manager. And Maggie's the general manager. She's my boss, and I have to answer to her. And she's saying, you know what, John, I don't want you to do those series of PMs this month because that'll give me 50,000 back on my bottom line, and it'll make my numbers look proper. Well, that's fine. Maggie might be here today and gone tomorrow, but I'm still stuck with that fleet. And so is the organization, right? You may keep that piece of equipment, 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe even longer, in some industries, they keep them a very long time. We've got to preserve the value of our asset, right? That impacts our total cost of ownership in a big way, right? We want to make sure that we're doing what we can and trying to keep it within the lifespan that we determine that we want for that. So if you think about it, let's say we skip those PMs. They become expensive, right? The number that has been used, it's a pretty well-known number, is that an unplanned breakdown, maybe it needs a tow. We all know how bad the towing bills are now. Think if those have gone up 40%. They were already bad enough to start with. It's got a big cost. So usually the cost of having to do an unplanned breakdown repair is usually 4 times the cost of doing something in a controlled, planned environment. Might be overtime. You might have things that you don't even know, right? Like you're having to pay the driver overtime or the operator overtime. Maybe you've got to get somebody to go, maybe you got to pay another driver to make that run. So you're paying for the driver that's broken down in the truck. And now I'm paying another driver to go pick up that trash in another truck, and then I've got to pay a mechanic overtime to fix the one that we need. Maybe all of that could have been prevented by doing a good inspection to begin with, right? So, and it never happens at a good time, right? So minor issues could be dealt with. And they also cause chaos, in the organization, right? It's not good, right? And it does have impacts on the customer. So if your trash doesn't get picked up, I don't know about you, but I want my trash to be picked up. And it doesn't make me more upset than it not happening, right? It's like, why? Or a big old puddle of oil or hydraulic fluid is left sitting in my driveway, because they run around something that's leaking and they don't want to fix it, right? Whatever the case might be, it does reputational damage too, right? There's also compliance, right? You've got compliance risks. If you're subject to state inspection or DOT or hazardous materials or whatever it might be, that you have to comply with, and you're not doing that work, you're not meeting that. Some of the authorities out there get a quick reputation, right? And they'll lay in wait for you and they'll say, okay, yep, that's their trucks. And they'll, it costs a lot. They put a piece of equipment out of service, what that's going to be. I think, something else is that if your fleet is known as a well-maintained fleet, right? The resale values could be higher. The trade-in, if you trade it in for new equipment, is going to be higher. If they're leased to owner operators after you run the first 5 years on it, they're still going to command more because it's a nicer, better piece of equipment that's been well maintained, and people have confidence in buying that, right? So it does tend to help that. The other thing is, as Maggie was talking about, safety. I mean, not maintaining a piece of equipment and it going out and having a crash or contributing to a crash because it wasn't maintained well. Well, we know every lawyer on TV. I mean, the government's unfortunately huge risk, right? There's some things to help protect them, but think about every other commercial you see: a big truck swerved into my lane, please call me, lawyer, whoever, and so you want to make sure you're doing the right, that you can defend yourself by doing maintenance on time. It's very hard. If you're doing a great job of that and you've got the documentation in place, it's hard for them to poke a hole in that, right? There are things that slip by, no doubt about it, but that's a big deal. And also too, that also helps with, if you were to get, say, maybe your insurance underwriter comes in and they want to do a mini like, DOT audit on you to see how you're doing, and you can produce the records, right? That gives them confidence that, where their risk is, right? What are they up against when they're looking at that? And productivity, right? That piece of equipment was supposed to be doing something. Maybe it's hauling a piece of freight from one city to another. Maybe it's delivering milk. Maybe it's picking up trash. Maybe it's hauling people, right? Maybe it's a fire truck that's got to get somewhere. My goodness, we don't want that to break down, right? It's important, right? That loss of productivity, whatever it might be, whatever that mission of that piece of equipment is supposed to be. And then once again, your reputational damage, right? Seeing something being towed or broken down on the side of the road doesn't give people a lot of confidence, right? So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. And it's, I think some of those are just kind of timeless things. So we do have another poll. We have a poll here about when you think about your fleet's total cost, what expense category is the hardest for you to track or forecast? Now, before you answer, fuel, from a fleet management perspective, from somebody dealing with maintenance, I can't control the cost of fuel. I can only contribute to the consumption of fuel by doing good maintenance, proper maintenance, right? Whether my tires are aired up, whether we've got the piece of equipment in proper engine operating order or whatever. So if you think about fuel, think of your observance of the consumption and what you do. And then, of course, we've got repairs, downtime, or maybe it's something else. So we'd appreciate your input on that. If you could take a few minutes and respond.
One of the other, something else, if you want to think about it, is whether you have the right type of vehicle for the right type of service that you're providing. And I have a smaller vehicle than I should? Do I have one that's too big? Those all play into this as well. And that's part of your life cycle costing and utilization. And that one comes in as well.
We're still getting results. So, and I will say that the results so far look, once again, very normal. The things that we hear, right? The downtime, the repairs. I don't know what the something else's are, but the others tend to follow right in, and fuel being last. Not that fuel cost isn't a major consideration. It certainly is, right? And it's awful sometimes in a fleet where, because the price of fuel just took a big spike, the budgets have to be cut somewhere else to pay for that fuel, right? But from the entire fleet's cost, that's an important number, right? What's the cost of the fuel that goes in? But the consumption is what we in maintenance can most directly impact, right? And then, of course, there is some driver input in that too. All right, and so we see the results, right? 50% downtime, right? 30% repairs, 10% fuel, and then we have a few other things as well. But thank you for responding. That's very good. Maggie, I think, do you have any wisdom for where our costs are headed this year and beyond?
I think our costs are going to continue to go up. I think one of the reasons is the new technology and the fact that we're going to have to retrain so many of the technicians, and that's not something that they're have muscle memory of how to do yet and all of the different things. I think you're also going to see telematics is going to start sending more and more of these are the issues, the automated inspections telling people they're there. In the long run, that's going to be good because it'll tell us where we need to focus our maintenance as well. But until then, the problem that we run into is we don't have all that yet, and we're not tracking it as well as we're going to have to be able to keep up with that. So those are my comments on that, John.
Yeah, and I've already covered the slide I'm putting up on the screen, but I get so excited about when you skip them, right, and not stop it. So sometimes I do get a little bit ahead of myself on these, but you've already heard all the reasons, right, that aren't the greatest in the world there, right, when you skip a PM, right? So
I think that's a great visual, though.
Yes, I think it is, right, because it helps you understand what's the most thing. And we just heard, we validated it through the poll, right, that unplanned downtime is the number one concern, right, because it causes the most disruption. And then, of course, you've got to do the repairs and go from there, right? So it tends to follow the, where we are on that. Okay. So Maggie.
Thank you. The challenges, yes. We have challenges and why total cost of ownership is essential. And so when we look at this, we have the problem. We all know them, the rising costs, the data that's not clean or it's scattered in multiple places, etc. We have the key challenges, and then we have cost insight for 2025. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about each of these. And the problem with the rising cost is that we don't track all the costs. And so sometimes fleets say, well, we already paid labor and we track labor differently. We won't put the labor cost on the repair orders. Well, if you don't put that cost on the work order, repair order, then you're not getting the total cost of what it costs you to maintain that piece of equipment. Sometimes they say, well, my labor rate is going to be just what I pay that mechanic. If you do that, you're missing all the overhead costs to have that mechanic there, the benefit hours, the supervisors, etc. So you really have to look at all the costs before you can look at how that's impacting your bottom line. Without a total view, it's easy to miss those things or miss opportunities of where you can reduce cost. The key challenges, one of the biggest key challenges is fixed costs and what we consider indirect costs. So if I buy or lease a truck today, there's other costs other than just the acquisition cost. I have licensing costs, I have registration and permits, and I have financing costs that I need to take into consideration, how long I'm going to depreciate it, etc. I have to track my toll cost because that has an effect if you're running over the road, and insurance costs. What are all the costs, not just maintenance costs? And so many of those things show up and we just track fuel and maintenance, but don't forget there's a cost of downtime, cost of compliance. What do you have to do in today's world to comply with all the federal regulations, state regulations, even some of your own internal regulations and policies that you have? Overhead and safety related costs were hit in different directions, and we need to capture all of those under our key challenges, right? And then if I look at how do I change that? Well, I want to have a strategy in place, and that's managing your TCO. Okay, you got to have the full picture. And then we have the cost insights for 2025. Well, fuel costs are expected to remain one of the biggest contributors to TCO, but your fuel costs may be different if I'm in a small city or if I'm in a large city, depending on what my service area is. So I can look at cost per mile. And again, you need to really look at whether you have the right type of equipment for the right type of service that you're providing. And that cost can be up to 35% of your total ownership cost. Maintenance and repair costs are projected to continue to increase. And if it's only by 3%, which is what I heard before, I think we're fooling ourselves, and that's where that's going to go. And that's not just because of inflation and labor challenges, but it's because of all the different technologies that we are putting on these trucks. Just like John was saying, 700 new components. And so now that we have more of those, we're going to have to repair more of those, and we're going to have to take a look at how we train for that. The trends on the highway when managing isn't optional. It's essential for building efficiency, but your costs are going to rise. And so now you need to see how you can get those costs under control by just, first you have to monitor it. If you can't see it, you can't monitor it. So John, what are your thoughts on those topics?
Yep. And I had one that I just made a note of when you were talking, and that was about the burden mechanic rate. So whether you are in that exact business or not in the trucking, you know, the recommended practices that are part of the Technology and Maintenance Council's publications, American Trucking Association, they have a formula that they recommend to use. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to use their formula, but whatever formula you use, you need to be consistent over the years. And the reason it's important to use that burden rate is, say you're considering what's work for, like if I have it done at a outside shop, you know, maybe at one of the ones Maggie mentioned, you know, at a on the road shop. Maybe I have a fleet shop that we deal with versus my own facility, right? If you have an artificially low rate for your technician rate, your mechanic rate, it's going to look like it will be cheaper. You should be 20% cheaper, right? Because you're not trying to make a profit on yourself, right? But it shouldn't be that it costs me 25% of what it costs if I send it out, unless it's maybe a breakdown where we got that 4X, right? But still, we want to be able to do it. And what I try to use, I don't know about Maggie's number, but I try to look for a number that when somebody gives me their burden rate, I ask them, what do they charge, you know, at one of the dealerships, right? Or one of the truck rates. And then I say, what's 20% less of that? Because your cost is going to be somewhere close to that if you get all the items that are recommended. You know, what's the cost of the building? What's the insurance? What's the supervision? What's, you know, what all the things that you have that make up the cost of running that shop, to be able to see that. So I think it's important. The other thing that will let you do, for years, right? The gold standard has been, what's the cost per mile? What's the cost per hour? You know, what's the cost per whatever, right? The day. But one of the things that I'm very impressed with that we can do now natively within our own application and in our world is we can give you the cost per business metric. So you think of in our dairies, right? It's normalized to the gallons of milk. What's our maintenance cost, or what's our vehicle cost per gallon of milk, right? The old days, what you had to do is you had to take that maintenance cost, figure out what you were doing versus you can bring that information in now. Think about like a fuel oil company. What's my maintenance cost per gallon of fuel delivered, or per passenger that we carry, or whatever you can measure, like in the beer, it's cases or whatever we do, right? Everybody's got their business metric. In the waste and recycling, it's per tons of trash. So what's that truck costing me per ton of trash that it hauls into the transfer station or into the landfill, right? So you can natively do that and get that insight, and it really, you don't have to go to multiple different systems to be able to do that. So I think looking at that whole thing, it's just such a strategic approach for you. And you know, we've talked about preventive maintenance and all the negative. So let's talk about the positive of that real quick. What should I be getting to? We see time and time again that people start out because you don't know. That's why you're putting the system into place. Maybe you just got whiteboards, maybe a spreadsheet, maybe a legacy system, maybe even our systems, right? We've been doing this 46 years, you know, there's over 4,000 customers have come through our doors. Maybe you start out at a pretty bad rate, 10, 15, 20% compliance with your own plan, right? Well, where do you want to get that? You've got to make sure that plan is reasonable. It's achievable, because you do no good by demoralizing everybody and getting to that. The goal can never be reached. It's got to be a reasonable goal. Do I need more people to do that? Maybe we just need to be able to have visibility in what needs to be done. The goal would be 95%. It takes a long time to get there. You're not going to do it overnight, right? And the other problem is that if you weren't doing something, make it very simple. Like, I'm doing my oil changes on time, right? Well, I might void your warranty. You might have a lot of other things, but you're going to avoid that cost initially, right? So now if I start doing those things on time, well, I'm going to have additional costs that I wasn't realizing because we weren't doing certain maintenance that we should have been done that will bite us down the road years later, right? And so by doing that work, by getting something reasonable, and maybe we will place, I see a lot of companies doing this, and they've been doing it for a long time, is they reward their management for getting that work done on time, because that is going to preserve the value of that asset, whatever it might be, and save money going down the road. So getting that done on time, and it can be a source of pride for the shops. Think about it. Drivers, operators, everybody considered, they're going to be happier in a well-maintained piece of equipment that does what it's supposed to do every day. And of course, you've got to get the drivers involved and operators involved, because they need to tell us when something has gone wrong between our inspections that we do, right? So to be able to get to that. So if we look at, what kind of makes up, and where I pulled it from, and there's a lot of debate about what makes up total cost of ownership, right? But I just go back to, we're big supporters. All of our people in my group are VMRS certified, as well as our support teams. And so we're big believers and supporters of the Technology and Maintenance Council. Even though I came, and Maggie did too, from mass transit, we still believe, because they encompass everybody, not just the trucking space, right? It's just that's, where it's been for all these years. And we kind of follow their recommended practice for what makes that up, right? So, what's making it up, right? The purchase price, of course, or the lease or whatever, right? Repairs that we do, maintenance, campaigns, service, what services do we need to do? Support, security, training, all of those things are going to make up the cost of owning that piece of equipment, right? So when we calculate it, according to the TMC, what we do is we use acquisition cost to operating cost to financing cost, if you have it, depreciation, compliance, management, all of that factors in. All of those pieces are coming in to understand that total cost of ownership. And so once again, if we just use the number one thing on the maintenance side of it, right? There's all kinds of tools that you're going to use for the financing and for the lease or whatever, right? And that's frankly, that's a little outside of where my expertise is, right? My expertise is on the maintenance side, but we know how to achieve that, right? We know how to get that cost really, really flat and predictable. And that's the whole thing, right? Predictability. Nobody wants to have a shortfall in the budget, and then you've got a crisis at the end of the year because you didn't do it. And nothing will wreck budgets quicker than unplanned maintenance, and especially big, expensive repairs where you have to fix it to keep whatever it is running, right? So we can, there's quite a few things though, that we can sort of do. One of them is our inventory, right? So I'm going to go over to some strategies, and I'll let Maggie take the ones that her expertise, and then we'll bounce back to me. And then we're ready pretty much to have some questions, whatever questions you got, we'll try to get through some of them. So Maggie,
Sure.
Take the ones that are around your inventories and better data. And I may have already said enough about PM, so we'll let you go.
So I want to talk about optimizing your inventory for just a minute. And that's having the right parts available when you need them. Now, there's lots of ways to make it easier for the staff on the floor, the mechanics and the parts people. You can barcode this. You can have a picture of what that part's supposed to look like. So they can go open a box and say, that's not the right one. Well, close the box and put it back where it belongs on the shelf. That's all part of inventory control. But there's things that we need to look at. We need to get a list of the parts when we buy a new piece of equipment. The manufacturers will give you that. It's a data line sheet. You need to know what kind of parts are in it, and then you keep track of that so that if you've got 10 of those vehicles that you just bought, then now set your min-max accordingly to optimize the inventory that you have. Don't keep something for 40 years. It is amazing to me, as many fleets as I've been in over all these years, that they will have a box outside with all the old stuff just in case I need it. Well, the amount of time it takes the mechanic to go out and go through that big box, right? or the storeroom to find something is ridiculous. And if you don't have the storeroom set up so they can find it and a way that the mechanic can see it, we run into problems with optimizing the inventory. Don't stock what you don't need, stock things you do. And if something is really difficult to acquire, we had some vehicles in our fleet that were manufactured in Germany. I don't know, I'm a US city, and we still had them that we bought from Germany, and it took a while to get them in. And now with the supply and things going on in the US, it may take longer. So you also need to look at the mean time between failures, and you need to look at your lead time. Very big on both of those. And then you've got to leverage better data. You've got to track all of it. You've got to know what's happening. You've got to know what you need to reorder. Those things are really important, because if you don't keep track of that, you can't plan. And if you can't plan, then something's going to fall through the cracks and you're going to have a delay and a disruption. So another area is training and safety, and investments are there. Invest in your people, invest in what they know, make sure that we have those. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that you were aware of is total cost of ownership is an important framework. It doesn't give you the answers. No data will, but you have to have the framework with all the pieces. I have a daughter who liked to be the last person to put a puzzle together ever. So she and her sister and her dad would put puzzles, and she would go hide a piece so they couldn't finish it without that piece. Well, your total cost of ownership is the same way. You can't finish it and control it and have the big picture without that last piece of puzzle. John, until now we've been talking at the pieces and putting it together. And American Trucking Association has formulas, as well do NAFA and American Public Works. They have formulas to figure out what you should have for ownership calculations. And so with that, there are different areas that you can find it. So a short overview would be acquisition cost, operating cost, financial cost, depreciation, compliance costs, and management costs. Just wanted to put that back out there for you as a reminder so that you would know. Okay. So do you have comments on that?
I do. And I think I'm going to use that puzzle. I've worked with Fialali 14 years, I think, but I didn't know that puzzle trick. But I will try it next time I got one. So the plan maintenance, so we talked about PM compliance, right? Being high. That's a great place to start. And if you can get we're with all the componentry that we have on equipment and the complex and the electronics and the emissions and all the stuff that we're facing, right? If we can get to 80% of our work to be scheduled, because with maybe not having a lot of spare equipment, maybe you have to defer some maintenance. That doesn't mean that you're not doing a PM. It just means, okay, this can wait, right? To cut seat or something, and you can wait a little bit before we get to it. But if you can schedule it, if we can get to 80%, that's an achievable goal, right? So that only 20% of our work is unplanned. That'll certainly contribute to a better operation, right? Less downtime, happier people all the way around. I mean, mechanics don't like having to go and text. They don't like having to deal with breakdowns and stuff. It doesn't make them any happier than anybody else, right? And the driver's sitting in a piece of equipment burning up on the side of the road because they have no air conditioning because the truck won't run. So just makes for a better day, right? And that's the thing. And then get a modern software. I've been in fleet maintenance, but the funny part is as I think they said, what is it, 82, 83, whatever year I actually started, I've always had a piece of software for running a fleet. I was very lucky to be able to have that, right? A lot of people haven't always had something. So I've been kind of spoiled in my career. So that doesn't make me an Excel wizard, but I know how to get data out of a system. The modern systems, what you want to be able to do is you want to make sure it has an open API. You really want a cloud-based system if you can. And this is me coming from where I sit, obviously, right? But you're more secure, right? You also have any one of the main line, we have, legitimate competitors out there that build very good products, right? But you want a company like that because we're constantly innovating. If one of us builds something, the other one's going to build something better, we hope, right? Keeps us good and better at what we do, but we're constantly innovating and trying to bring new things to the market. And, think about it, right? You can bring stuff from dissimilar systems, right, together, right, by using something like Power BI, giving people access to a data warehouse. In the old days, all that software had to be on your own servers to be able to get access, right? But with the way that we've got all of the technology now to let customers get directly to the data warehouse, so directly to anything that you can see on the screen, right? It's very, very powerful because you can bring together information from dissimilar systems, like maybe something comes from your ERP system for the operations, or customer service or whatever it might be, and another piece comes from maintenance and so forth, right? Bringing all that together in easy to view, because you never know what you're going to be. And also, this is something I'm very proud of, at least for our company. We haven't had to write a single custom report in over 5 years with our new product because customers can do it themselves through the API. Think about that. It's saving you money, customer, right? And it's saving our development organization to be able to concentrate on making new and innovative solutions, right? So that the software can work better and do more for you, right? And then, we're not trying to hold you hostage to say, oh, you got to come back to us for another report, because it's your data, right? That's why you're doing all this. You're spending a lot of money capturing the data, and you want to be able to put that data to good work, right? So I want to. This is somebody I've worked with for a lot of years, Bob Nolan, right? He's with Hagen Coach in Transportation Systems. The understand the total cost for them has been very important, right? They have been, I guess they've been on our solution for over 20 years at least, right? Many customers, and it lets them see everything from tracking their tires to their preventive maintenance, and they understand their cost down to a T, right? They're running school children, and they want to be able to do that effectively, efficiently, and understand those costs, right? As well as their charter operation as well, right? And it just makes it really easy. I don't think they would know how to operate. Like, I personally wouldn't know how to operate if I didn't have a system giving me that information, right? Because I've always had a solution, right? So with that, we have a time enough for some questions here, and then we shouldn't get to all the questions. You could add them in, and we can follow up on those as well. Josh, do you have some that you want to throw at us here?
Yeah, thank you both for that very informative presentation. You gave us all a lot to think about. We have some questions coming in. Before we get to them, we did have a few questions asking if this your deck presentation would be available, and we're going to make sure that's available to anyone who asked. And as a reminder, this will also be available on fleetowner.com, a replay of this webinar in case you missed anything or you want to share it with some colleagues. Just first off, though, we did get a question asking if AMCS has any bulk chemical tanker trailer fleets as customers using your maintenance software, not only for maintenance, but for tank wash facilities.
Yes. So we do. And I'm going to probably defer to Maggie. I know that we have those customers, right? And I know also that the one that I'm really familiar with is on the dairy, the washouts for the dairy, and all that sanitation, right? And all of that's done with our software. Maggie, I'm assuming that you have some that are using it on the tank washout that would be the chemical haulers.
We have the concrete truck fleets, and we have some of the larger waste management that have the chemicals that they are having to take care of, and they're doing that as well.
The hazardous, yeah, and I know we have many bulk carriers as well. So I would assume, like I said, I only one I could tell you that does the washout is the dairies, but sure, we do have people like some of the big grocery stores, right? They'll use our software, and they'll use us not only for the fleet side of things, they'll also use us for the warehousing operation,
right.
For the forklifts and the freezers and the doors and every other thing that makes the place run, right? So we can We're not strictly to fleet. I mean, that's a place that it's our bread and butter across all the different verticals, but I don't know of any reason that you wouldn't be just fine there.
Excellent. Let's move on to another question. What's the easiest way to track cost per mile without pulling reports from 5 different systems? This is a common question. I think we hear a lot throughout the industry. Which one of you want to tackle that one?
Well, I'll take a shot at it, John. I would say that you need to have one system of record, and that should be your fleet maintenance record, where you can pull all the other data in. So if you're pulling in the fuel information so that you can get cost per mile, then you need to have one place that it comes in. Having a single system also reduces all of the duplicate entry and maintaining of your asset records. So having one, pull the data in, have it ability to track that for you, and then use the APIs and the Power BIs to pull that data together all in one place.
Excellent. So speaking of cost per mile, are there benchmarks that you have for what a good cost per mile would be for various fleet operations?
There are. We typically, I'll let Maggie speak about the one she's expert in, and then I'll give a couple. But for instance, on the trucking side, right, there's plenty of reports out there where they've done studies and they get the cost per mile, and they usually break it up. Like, are you LTL? Are you for hire? Are you specialty? Right. The one problem with it is that I've seen is that the subset, the sampling, I should say, of that is pretty low, right? They usually don't get a lot of participants, even as big as American Trucking Association. They don't get a lot. So it can be a little bit off. I mean, I think the data is carefully gone over for the fleets that are willing to participate. But here's the deal. You think about it, right? Even within your own operation, right? You may have a very different cost in like, say, California, right, versus Texas. And it could be factors of compliance and regulation, the cost of labor, the cost of parts, just everything combined, right? And then, it may be cheaper in one place than the other. So within that, you can potentially have vast different costs per whatever it is, cost per mile, cost per hour, cost per ton of trash, cost per, gallon of milk delivered, whatever it might be. And you've got to just analyze where yours is and then do the best you can. I think, Maggie, you have a couple other that do give us some reasonability on, like, transit, paratransit, government.
We do. And one of the things that we tell everybody when they start to do benchmarking is you have to benchmark yourself first. Where are you? And then you have to look at where you are in conjunction with someone the same size city in the same environment or the same transit. Are you running coach? What are you running? A bus fleet for a school bus is going to have different cost per mile than an over-the-road transit. All right. If you have a motor coach fleet, those things, you have to look at the same type of industry, the same place, the same type of service, and where you currently are, and then better yourself to that benchmark. Always make yourself better. But you look at it, and sometimes people look at your regional fleet organizations and APWA and all of those and see what they have for setting those different rates, and then look at what that benchmark may be. So don't just look at a cost per mile, but look at the other benchmarks that you need to look at as well. That's what I would have.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we've run out of time. I feel like you two could talk for hours more about this, about how important. Well, the good news is we'll be reaching out to all of our attendees here with a link once this goes live again. And again, we're going to get out a copy of this presentation to those who asked. But that concludes today's webcast. On behalf of Fleet Owner, I'd like to thank John and Maggie for sharing that great presentation with us, and AMCS for sponsoring today's event. And of course, I want to thank you for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again on fleetowner.com. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time.
Great stuff, guys.